Hello there. This is Kasano. Around the world, there are many religions. Among them, the largest is Christianity. It's said to have about 2.4 billion followers, meaning roughly 1 in every 3 people on Earth is a Christian. That's incredible, isn't it? So, how many Christians do you think there are in Japan? Of course, Japanese people know the name Jesus Christ. After all, we learn about him in school. And even the missionary who first introduced Christianity to Japan in the 16th century, Francis Xavier, is so well known that most Japanese can recognize him just from his portrait. In regular schools, students also study Christian-related figures like Dostoevsky or Mother Teresa, along with parts of Christian history and culture. On top of that, there are about 75 mission schools across Japan, institutions founded and run by Christian organizations or figures. Christmas is celebrated nationwide as a festive event. Many Japanese even travel abroad with the goal of visiting famous cathedrals. And of course, church weddings are very popular, so much so that many people here can sing hymns just from attending weddings. But with all this, how many Christians do you think actually live in Japan? The answer is, about 1%. Shockingly small, isn't it? And this is one of the fascinating paradoxes about Japan. So today, let's dive into why Christianity never truly spread in Japan. The arrival of Christianity in Japan. Christianity first came to Japan in 1549, when Francis Xavier, a Jesuit missionary of the Catholic Church, arrived with the goal of spreading the faith. At that time, Japan was in the middle of the Sengoku, or Warring States, period. This was the age when powerful warlords like Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu fought for control of the nation. When Xavier reached Kyushu, Oda Nobunaga held the reins of power. Although missionaries often clashed with locals, they managed to gain Nobunaga's protection, which allowed them to spread Christianity, especially in Kyushu, winning converts steadily. At the time, regional lords known as daimyo governed their territories, and some of these leaders chose to embrace Christianity. But their motives were not purely spiritual. In a time of constant warfare, strengthening one's military power was key to survival and possible unification of Japan. That meant securing weapons and supplies. Since Japan could not manufacture advanced weapons domestically, converting to Christianity, and thus gaining access to lucrative trade with Europeans, was a very appealing option. Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Christianity. As time passed and Toyotomi Hideyoshi rose to power, Christianity had spread widely in Kyushu. But at the same time, some missionaries began to openly attack Japan's traditional religions, Shinto and Buddhism. They viewed Buddhism as idolatry invented by the devil. To them, Christianity was the one true faith, and all others were false, or even evil. Some missionaries went so far as to incite Japanese converts to set fire to Buddhist temples, or to destroy hidden statues of the Buddha that monks had concealed in caves. Records of these actions survive even in the missionaries' own writings. It's a chilling reminder of how extreme religious zeal can become. There were also rumors, though not fully verified, that Portuguese traders were trafficking Japanese people overseas. When Hideyoshi heard this, he issued the Batter Expulsion Edict, ordering foreign missionaries to leave Japan. At this stage, however, he merely banned missionary work. Private Christian belief was still tolerated. Then came the San Felipe incident. In 1596, a Spanish galleon named the San Felipe was shipwrecked off the coast of Tosa Province, modern-day Kochi Prefecture. Hideyoshi confiscated the ship's cargo and the crew's possessions. In protest, one of the crew revealed, Spain and Portugal send missionaries first to spread Christianity, and once believers increase, they send in soldiers to conquer the land. This statement infuriated Hideyoshi and deepened his suspicion toward Christianity. At that point, missionaries were no longer seen as mere religious figures. Through trade, they already wielded significant economic and military influence, making them impossible to ignore politically. Hideyoshi strengthened the expulsion edict and escalated the persecution, eventually banning Christianity altogether in Japan. This led to the execution of the 26 martyrs of Japan. In Nagasaki, 26 Catholics were crucified, 20 were Japanese, 5 were Spanish, and 1 was Portuguese. Tokugawa Ieyasu and the ban on Christianity. After Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Tokugawa Ieyasu rose to unify Japan. At first, Ieyasu did not see Christianity as a problem. But soon, Protestant missionaries also arrived, and he realized that even within Christianity, there were fierce divisions and conflicts. This is the very period depicted in the Disney Plus series Shogun. Ieyasu was the shogun who finally ended the Warring States era, and he valued stability above all. He came to believe that the spread of Christianity threatened the fragile peace of Japan, and so he issued an edict banning the religion. Churches that had been spreading across Japan were dismantled. Missionaries were rounded up in Nagasaki and expelled to places like Macau and Manila. Later, the Tokugawa shogunate adopted a policy of national isolation, or Sengoku. Under this policy, not only missionaries but even non-religious foreigners could not enter Japan without special permission. And so, for more than 260 years, Christianity remained strictly forbidden. Christians during the ban. But outlawing a religion is one thing, erasing people's faith is another. The shogunate responded with strict enforcement. From 1629, it introduced the practice of fumii, forcing people to step on images of Christ or the Virgin Mary. Anyone who refused was exposed as a Christian and punished. These Christian hunts were carried out several times a year. It began in Nagasaki and later spread across all of Kyushu, showing just how many Christians lived in that region. In 1637, the Shimabara Rebellion broke out. This large-scale uprising took place in the Shimabara and Amakusa regions of Nagasaki, led mainly by farmers and Christians. The rebellion was sparked by the brutal taxation policies of the local lord. Farmers who could not pay, along with Christians who refused to renounce their faith, were tortured and executed, pushing the people to revolt. The rebels were led by Amakusa Shiro, a charismatic Christian figure who was only 16 years old at the time. The rebel army was crushed by a massive shogunate assault. There were even rumors that they had been waiting for Portuguese reinforcements, which led to the expulsion of Portuguese merchants who had still been allowed to trade. The shogunate then tightened its isolation policy and reinforced the ban on Christianity. The hidden Christians. Driven underground, Japanese Christians began practicing their faith in secret. These were the hidden Christians, or Kakure Kirishitan. With missionaries expelled and priests absent, Japanese Christians were left on their own for over 200 years. As a result, Christianity in Japan evolved in unique and independent ways. This history was later portrayed in Shusaku Endo's novel Silence, which Martin Scorsese adapted into a film in 2016. Some of you may be familiar with it. Hidden Christians disguised their faith carefully. For example, statues known as Maria Cannon looked like Buddhist figures at first glance, but actually represented the Virgin Mary. Even in death, they practiced secrecy, holding a Buddhist funeral first, then secretly performing a Christian ceremony afterward. Interestingly, even after the ban was lifted centuries later, many hidden Christians chose not to rejoin the Catholic Church, but to continue their old traditions instead. In fact, the hidden Christian sites in the Nagasaki and Amakusa regions were recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in July 2018. Japan's Westernization and Christianity. Japan's Westernization and Christianity. In the late 19th century, the Tokugawa shogunate collapsed, and Japan entered an era of modernization. With the end of isolation, the ban on Christianity was lifted, and missionaries could once again preach in Japan. At this moment, missionaries arrived in large numbers. Japan's leaders were shocked by the gap between Japan and the Western world. They felt modernization was urgent and eagerly embraced anything Western. As a result, many elites rushed toward Christianity. Enlightenment thinkers like Yukichi Fukuzawa even argued Christianity should become Japan's state religion. They reasoned, Western nations uphold morality and strengthen their societies through Christianity, so Japan should adopt it too. For context, Fukuzawa is so influential that his portrait appears on Japan's highest value banknote. Many Japanese hoped missionaries would teach them foreign knowledge and languages. Missionaries, in turn, established schools, using education as a doorway to spread their faith. The needs of both sides matched perfectly. The Catholic Church entrusted Japan's mission to the Paris Foreign Missions Society, beginning in Nagasaki. They focused not only on evangelism, but also on education and social welfare. By 1884, they had 84 churches, 54 priests, 252 catechists, and over 30,000 believers. Protestant missionaries first arrived in 1859, centering their work in Yokohama, but soon expanded to Kumamoto and Sapporo. Within about 15 years, nearly all major Protestant denominations had established missions in Japan. The Orthodox Church began its mission in 1861, when a Russian priest was stationed at the consulate in Hakodate, Hokkaido. Even as anti-Russian sentiment grew and the Russo-Japanese War broke out in 1904, the church expanded steadily. By 1911, when Bishop Nikolai was elevated to Archbishop, the Japanese Orthodox Church had 265 churches and nearly 32,000 believers, second only to the Catholics in size. Why didn't Christianity spread further? Christianity grew rapidly at first, gaining tens of thousands of followers and even being proposed as Japan's state religion by intellectuals. Yet after that, it failed to spread much more widely. Why was that? Scholars offer many explanations, but one of the most important is Japan's belief in Yaoyorozu no Kami, literally, 8 million gods. The phrase doesn't mean exactly 8 million. In Japanese, 8 symbolizes many, and 10,000 suggests countless variety. Together, it means an infinite multitude of gods. Traditionally, the Japanese believed that gods existed everywhere: mountain gods, rice field gods, even gods of the kitchen and toilet. A single grain of rice was said to contain 7 gods. There were even deities for intangible things, like business or learning. We don't know exactly when this mindset began, but it appears in Japan's oldest chronicle, the Kojiki, compiled in 712. At its heart is animism, the belief that the divine dwells in all of nature. Japan also has the flexibility to elevate real historical figures to the status of gods. Tokugawa Ieyasu, who unified the country, became revered as Tasho de Gongen. Sugawara no Michizane, a scholar from 1,000 years ago, is worshipped nationwide as the god of learning. And there are many more. With countless gods already, adding a new one is never a problem. That's simply the Japanese way. This nature-based spirituality lives on in Shinto shrines. But if you ask Japanese people whether they believe in Shinto, many would say no. After all, on December 24th they celebrate Christmas, on December 31st they listen to temple bells at New Year's Eve, and on January 1st they visit shrines for Hatsumaut. During festival season, they carry Shinto makashi, and when a relative dies, they go to a Buddhist temple. This relaxed, flexible view of religion is very Japanese. With that mindset, Christianity was accepted without resistance. Its culture carries a generally positive image, and many Japanese admire its long history. They dream of visiting European cathedrals or having their wedding in a church. But Japan lacks a foundation for believing in one absolute God. So Christianity was embraced more as one more God among many, rather than an exclusive faith. And that is the truth behind why only about 1% of Japanese are Christians. Most Japanese like the culture and moral values around Christianity, but that doesn't translate into faith. It's a uniquely Japanese paradox. What do you think about this? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and feel free to suggest topics for future videos. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe and hype, it really helps support the channel.